In the middle of the 22nd century, life had become peaceful for most of humanity. People lived across planets and space stations in nearby star systems. The Earth Systems Accord, an agreement between all human colonies, had ended wars and brought unity. For the first time in history, humans were not fighting each other for land, energy, or resources. Machines did most of the work. Cities were clean, technology was advanced, and people believed the universe was finally theirs to explore without fear. But peace had made people soft. Space travel, once filled with wonder and danger, had become a job like any other. Cargo ships carried minerals from the moons of Jupiter. Scientists on Mars studied ancient fossils. The thrill of discovery had faded. People no longer expected to find anything truly new. It had been over 100 years since the last major signal search for alien life, and every time the result was the same: silence. Dr. Leon Harper worked at an orbital listening post near Proxima Centauri, the closest star to Earth. Her job was simple: monitor deep space radio channels, record background signals, and check for any unusual patterns. Most of the time, the machines did it automatically. She only had to make sure the system didn't malfunction. She had spent 5 years doing the same routine, and nothing exciting had ever happened. One quiet night, as the outpost drifted in orbit, she sat at her console drinking recycled coffee. The stars outside looked cold and distant through the wide viewing glass. She was half listening to soft background music when her terminal screen flashed. At first, she thought it was just a system glitch. A faint blip appeared on the spectral graph, a narrow spike repeating at steady intervals. She frowned and checked the filters. It wasn't interference. The frequency didn't match any known human transmission. The signal was faint, barely above the cosmic noise, but it was there, steady and deliberate. She adjusted the receiver's angle, focusing on the source. It came from far beyond known jump lanes, a region with no registered colonies or probes. She ran it through pattern analysis software. After several minutes, the program highlighted something remarkable. The signal wasn't random. It repeated in a pattern based on prime numbers and the ratio of pi, universal constants in mathematics. Dr. Harper's heart began to race. She ran the signal through again, this time decoding it into sound. A slow pulsing tone filled the room. 3 short bursts, 3 long ones, 3 short again. Over and over. It was the simplest distress message in the universe. SOS. She checked the data 3 more times before alerting her superior officer. Commander Jiro Tanaka, the station's director, joined her in the control room. At first, he didn't believe it. Thousands of false signals had been reported in the past century, all caused by cosmic radiation, satellites, or old Earth probes. But when he saw the pattern himself, he grew quiet. The sequence was too perfect, too clean to be a natural phenomenon. Within an hour, the transmission logs were sent to the Earth System's central network. Every major science hub received a copy. The news leaked faster than they expected. By the next morning, social channels across human space were filled with one headline: First confirmed alien signal detected. The world reacted in chaos and awe. Some celebrated, saying it was proof humanity was not alone. Others panicked, fearing invasion or contamination. The old arguments returned. Should humans reach out or should they stay silent? Politicians argued on public broadcasts. Religious leaders claimed it was a sign from the heavens. Scientists warned against rushing to conclusions. Meanwhile, Dr. Harper sat alone in her small cabin, staring at the waveform on her tablet. For her, it wasn't about fear or hope. It was curiosity, the same force that had once driven humanity to explore the oceans and stars. The signal was beautiful in its simplicity, yet there was something deeply sad about it. Whoever sent it must have been desperate. The message had been traveling for light years, perhaps centuries, before reaching human ears. Maybe the senders were already gone. On Earth, research teams tried to locate the exact source. The signal came from a star system cataloged as HD 4307G, a red dwarf with several planets, all outside the habitable zone. It was a lonely corner of space, unimportant and unexplored. Yet the signal had come from there, repeating endlessly like a cry for help that refused to die. Weeks passed, and the signal did not change. It continued to pulse, constant and unwavering. Some experts believed it was an automated beacon, left behind by a civilization that no longer existed. Others thought it could be a trap, a lure for any intelligent species foolish enough to investigate. Still, the human spirit of discovery refused to stay quiet. The Earth Systems Council held emergency sessions. There were arguments between military and scientific leaders. The military wanted to analyze the signal from afar to see if it posed a threat. The scientists wanted to go there to see who or what had sent it. Public pressure grew stronger each day. Billions of people followed live broadcasts about the signal's updates. Documentaries, talk shows, and debates filled the networks. Humanity had grown bored of the stars, but now excitement had returned. Dr. Harper became an overnight celebrity. Her calm, thoughtful face appeared in every interview. But fame didn't interest her. She only wanted to understand. She spent long hours listening to the signal, studying its small fluctuations almost as if she could hear emotion within the sound. There were moments when she imagined voices hidden inside, soft whispers carried by light years of space. Finally, after months of debate, the council made a historic announcement. A mission would be sent. They named it Expedition 9, the first interstellar mission since the early days of human expansion. The ship would travel through deep jump space to reach the origin of the signal. Scientists, linguists, and security officers would make up the crew. The world watched the launch from every colony and city. For the first time in decades, humanity shared a common purpose again. The crew waved from the platform as the engines ignited, their faces lit by the blue glow of the drive. Among them was Commander Elias Rourke, chosen for his leadership in the Titan Wars, and Dr. Amira Velasquez, an expert in alien biology. Dr. Harper had declined to join the mission. She said her role was to listen, not to interfere. But she recorded a message for the crew, her voice calm and clear. If someone is calling for help, we owe it to them to answer. After the ship disappeared into the dark corridor of jump space, the signal continued to play. It echoed across the void, reaching new receivers, filling human minds with endless questions. Who were they? What happened to them? And why had they chosen to send an SOS across the stars? On quiet nights when the transmission was strongest, Dr. Harper would stand by the observation window of her station and watch the red star flicker in the distance. The hum of machinery filled the silence. The universe felt alive again, not empty but waiting. She thought about the civilizations that might have existed before humanity, about the loneliness that could drive an entire species to send a message into eternity. Far below, on Earth and its colonies, people began to look up at the night sky again. Children asked questions their parents couldn't answer. Artists painted new worlds. Engineers talked about faster ships. The discovery had changed something deep inside humanity. The long silence had finally been broken, and even though no one knew what waited on the other end of the signal, the stars no longer seemed so distant. For the first time in 100 years, humanity felt small and alive. The SOS continued to whisper through the darkness, a reminder that somewhere out there, another intelligence had once looked up at their own sky and hoped someone was listening, and after all this time, someone finally was. The discovery of the alien signal changed everything. After years of peace and quiet, humanity was suddenly divided. Everyone had an opinion about what to do next. Some said humans should answer the call immediately, that helping another species, no matter how far away, was a moral duty. Others warned that the signal could be dangerous, maybe even a trap. Politicians, scientists, and military leaders all spoke at once, and soon the entire Earth Systems Accord was filled with arguments. For weeks, every major city and colony was alive with discussions. In the floating cities above Venus, philosophers held public forums about the meaning of life beyond Earth. On the mining stations of Europa, workers watched news broadcasts on their terminals, betting credits on whether the aliens were friendly or hostile. Some religious groups believed it was a test from a higher power, a way to see if humanity had learned compassion. Others said it was the beginning of the end, that answering the signal would bring destruction. The scientists who first analyzed the signal had mixed feelings too. The message was so simple, just an SOS, but it carried emotion, a sense of urgency, that made it even more mysterious. A few researchers argued that such a signal, repeating endlessly, must be ancient, maybe sent by a civilization long gone. If that were true, there was no danger in responding. But military officials were not convinced. They said no one knew what kind of power or intelligence might still be behind it. In the middle of all the chaos, a special committee was formed by the Earth Systems Council. They called it the Deep Contact Response Board. Its job was to decide whether humanity should respond, and if so, how. The meetings were broadcast live across the colonies. Citizens watched as representatives from Mars, Luna, and the outer systems debated for hours. Every voice seemed to pull in a different direction. The military representative, General Rowan Kessler, stood in front of the cameras and spoke firmly. "We cannot assume this is a cry for help," he said. "It could be a test. It could be a trap. If we send ships without preparation, we risk exposing all of humanity to something we don't understand." Across the table, Dr. Amira Velasquez disagreed. She was one of the leading biologists studying alien environments, and she had spent her life arguing that life must exist elsewhere. "If another civilization has fallen," she said softly, "then we must learn why. If they destroyed themselves, we must understand how to avoid the same mistake. If they need help and we ignore them, what kind of species does that make us?" For days, the debate continued. Every hour, new analysis of the signal came in. The data showed it was automated, repeating on a perfect loop. But no one could say how long it had been transmitting. Some estimates said hundreds of years, maybe thousands. Whatever sent it was likely gone, but their voice remained. Finally, after endless discussion, a decision was made. Humanity would go, but this would not be a simple research trip. The Council approved the creation of a new interstellar mission, combining science, diplomacy, and defense. It would be the first major deep space journey in decades, one that would travel far beyond known jump lanes. They named it Expedition 9. The number carried weight. It symbolized humanity's ninth attempt to reach beyond its current limits. The ninth great step into the unknown. The mission began to take shape. Engineers from the Mars shipyards designed the vessel, Odyssey Dawn, using new propulsion systems capable of sustained high-speed travel through jump space. The crew was carefully chosen: scientists, linguists, engineers, and a small but elite security unit. Every member had to undergo psychological testing, because they would be gone for nearly 2 years, cut off from instant communication. Commander Elias Rourke was selected to lead the mission. He was a veteran, once a soldier during the Titan Wars, a time when humanity nearly destroyed itself. Rourke had seen what fear and greed could do, but he also believed in the strength of human curiosity. Quiet, disciplined, and respected, he was the kind of man people trusted to lead them into the unknown. When he received the assignment, Rourke spent the night alone in the old Titan War Memorial Park. He looked up at the stars and thought about how strange it was that after all humanity had suffered. Wars, climate collapse, near extinction. It was now being called to help someone else. "Maybe this is our chance to be better," he said quietly to himself. Dr. Amira Velasquez joined the mission as the lead scientist. Her studies focused on how alien environments could affect human biology. She believed that any civilization advanced enough to send a signal across light years must have knowledge worth learning. For her, this was not just about exploration. It was about understanding how life survived the universe's chaos. When the announcement was made public, excitement spread across every colony. For the first time in generations, people felt united by something greater than themselves. Schools organized viewing parties for the launch. Artists painted murals of the Odyssey Dawn surrounded by stars. Children wrote letters to the crew wishing them luck and courage. Even those who disagreed with the mission couldn't deny that it had reignited something powerful in humanity, a sense of wonder that had been lost. Dr. Leon Harper, the woman who had discovered the signal, watched the preparations from her station near Proxima Centauri. She had been offered a place on the mission, but she declined. She said she belonged among the signals, listening. Still, she felt a strange connection to the team. The sound she had first heard, the repeating SOS, was now the heartbeat of a new human age. As the launch day approached, the Odyssey Dawn stood ready at the orbital dockyards above Mars. It was massive, sleek and silver, built for both exploration and survival. Inside, every surface gleamed with new technology. The ship's AI, named Athena, could calculate millions of navigation routes and monitor the crew's health. It was the most advanced vessel humanity had ever built. The crew of 43 stood together before the cameras. Commander Rourke gave a short speech that was broadcast to billions. "We don't know who called us or why," he said, "but we know what it means to cry for help. If this signal is a warning, we will learn from it. If it's a call for aid, we will answer." Humanity once looked to the stars with fear. Now we look with hope. The countdown began. Engines hummed, lights flashed across the launch bay, and the Odyssey Dawn lifted slowly, its thrusters glowing blue. As it rose into the blackness, people across the solar system cheered. On Earth, the night skies filled with fireworks. On Mars, crowds gathered outside domed cities to watch the light of the engines fade. Even in the cold mining stations of the outer belt, workers paused their machines to look at the live feed. Then, silence. The ship vanished into jump space, a place where time and distance blurred. Only the crew knew what lay ahead. The first few weeks of travel were calm. The crew settled into routine, maintenance, system checks, and endless data recording. They spent time looking out through the observation decks, watching the strange shifting colors of the jump corridors. Some said it looked like an ocean made of light. Commander Rourke spent hours reading Dr. Harper's reports. He often replayed the original SOS message, letting the rhythmic pulse fill the quiet cabin. It had a hypnotic quality, something that seemed to echo inside the mind. He didn't tell anyone, but sometimes when he closed his eyes, he imagined voices inside the signal, a faint whispering that sounded almost human. Dr. Velasquez noticed strange patterns in the signal too. As the ship drew closer to the source, she found that tiny variations appeared in the transmission, like someone adjusting it, or maybe reacting to their approach. When she reported this to Rourke, he ordered constant monitoring. Was the signal automated or alive? Months passed. The crew grew restless, their bodies adapting to long stretches of artificial gravity and recycled air, yet morale stayed strong. Every person on board understood the importance of what they were doing. They were carrying the hopes of an entire species. Finally, after 9 long months, the Odyssey Dawn emerged from jump space into the destination system. Before them stretched a dim red dwarf star surrounded by debris and ruined planets. The main planet, catalogued as Luthra 4, was scarred and broken. Its surface glowed faintly from molten cracks, its atmosphere thin and dusty. As they approached orbit, the SOS signal grew louder, clearer. The transmission was still active, coming from deep beneath the planet's surface. Dr. Velasquez's instruments detected faint energy readings, artificial, not natural. Whatever was sending the signal was still functioning after centuries. The crew gathered in the observation bay as the planet turned slowly below them. It looked dead, but the signal kept calling. Commander Rourke looked at his team and said quietly, "This is it. We came all this way to answer a voice that refused to die. Let's find out who's still speaking." No one knew then that what they would discover beneath that ruined world would change humanity forever. But as they began their descent toward the surface of Luthra, one thought passed through every crew member's mind. The universe was no longer silent. Someone had spoken first, and now humanity was about to reply. The surface of Luthra 4 looked like a nightmare. The planet was cracked and burned, with blackened mountains and dried riverbeds that stretched for miles. The atmosphere was thin and dusty, tinted red by the dying light of its small star. As the Odyssey Dawn entered orbit, the crew stared in silence. No one spoke for a long time. They had come looking for life, but all they saw was death. Commander Elias Rourke gave the order to scan the surface. The signal they had followed for 9 months was still strong, coming from beneath the planet's crust. Dr. Amira Velasquez studied the readings and frowned. The signal wasn't just repeating, it was pulsing in a rhythm, as if responding to their presence. "It's aware of us," she whispered. They located the source near a deep crater surrounded by shattered structures. The ruins looked ancient, made of black stone mixed with metal. There were tall pillars lying broken in the dust and strange carvings that no one could understand. The landing team prepared to descend, wearing heavy suits to protect themselves from the toxic air. Rourke led the group, along with Dr. Velasquez, Engineer Karim D'Souza, and 2 security officers. The shuttle landed gently among the ruins. The air outside shimmered with heat, though the planet was cold. The dust crunched under their boots as they stepped out. Everything was silent. No wind, no sound, just the hum of their breathing through their helmets. The structures around them looked half-melted, as if a great fire had once swept across the planet. Dr. Velasquez bent down to examine the black soil. "It's full of carbon," she said. "Something burned here a long time ago." She looked up at the broken towers and sighed. Whatever civilization lived here destroyed itself. They followed the signal deeper into the crater. It led to a wide fissure in the ground, a massive crack that descended into darkness. From inside, faint blue light flickered like the pulse of a heartbeat. Rourke looked down into the abyss and said, "That's where it's coming from." Using climbing drones and scanners, they found a safe path inside. As they descended, the walls around them changed from rough rock to smooth metal. It was clear they had entered something artificial, an underground structure still powered after centuries. The air grew cooler and static buzzed through their comms. After nearly 2 hours of cautious descent, they reached a massive door covered in symbols. Some were geometric. Others looked almost like writing. When D'Souza scanned it, the door reacted, sliding open with a deep rumble that echoed through the chamber. Beyond it was a corridor glowing faintly with blue lines running along the walls. The technology looked advanced but also decayed, as if time had eaten away at it. At the end of the corridor, they found what looked like a control chamber. In the center stood a large sphere suspended above a platform, covered in faintly moving light patterns. Around it were machines that had long since gone silent. The sphere was the only thing still alive. "This is it," Dr. Velasquez said, her voice trembling with awe. "This must be the source of the signal." As she approached, the sphere emitted a soft hum and the lights on her suit flickered. Then a synthetic voice echoed in the chamber, deep and broken. "Signal. Received. Identity. Confirm." The team froze. Rourke quickly replied, "This is Commander Elias Rourke of the human ship Odyssey Dawn. We received your SOS. We've come to help." There was a pause. Then the voice responded, clearer this time. "Archivist 9, last function unit, of the Lutheran Continuum. Help not required. Observation required." The crew exchanged glances. Dr. Velasquez stepped closer. "Archivist 9, what happened here? Who are the Lutherans?" The sphere flickered and images appeared in the air. Holographic projections showing tall, slender creatures with pale skin and large, dark eyes. They moved gracefully through cities of glass and light. Then the images changed. Explosions, burning skies, and massive machines tearing the planet apart. The Lutherans were dominant species of Luthra-4, the AI said. They achieved unity, then division, war, eradicated biosphere, final act, preservation and message. The team watched in silence. The story unfolded like a ghostly memory. The Lutherans had been brilliant but proud. They had experimented with their own biology, creating stronger, smarter versions of themselves. In time, their society split between those who wanted control and those who wanted peace. War followed, long and terrible. The last survivors built the Archivist Network to store their knowledge and send a message into space, hoping someone else might find it and learn from their failure. Dr. Velasquez's voice was soft. "They destroyed themselves." The signal wasn't a cry for help, it was a warning. Rourke nodded slowly. "And we came anyway." As the crew gathered data, the sphere began emitting a low-frequency pulse. The vibrations passed through their suits almost like a heartbeat. D'Souza frowned and said, "That's strange, it's interacting with our biomonitors." The others felt it too, a tingling sensation in their temples, a faint warmth spreading through their bodies. Dr. Velasquez ran a scan on herself. "It's harmless, at least I think so. Maybe some kind of communication attempt." But as the minutes passed, the feeling grew stronger. Rourke felt more alert, his vision sharper. He noticed tiny details in the chamber he hadn't seen before. The texture of the walls, the pattern of light pulsing inside the sphere. It was as if his mind had been tuned to a higher frequency. The AI's voice returned. "You came from a death world. High resilience. Biological potential unmatched." The message reached. "Correct successors," Rourke frowned. "What do you mean by death world?" "Your planet," the AI said. "Hostile ecosystem. Species evolved under extreme conditions. Aggression and adaptation, dominant traits. Lutherans sought to suppress such instincts. They failed. You have embraced them. You will survive." The crew exchanged uneasy glances. The AI seemed to be studying them, analyzing their biology and behavior. Dr. Velasquez spoke again, her voice trembling slightly. "Did you design the signal to change us?" "Signal carries activation code," the AI replied. "Intended to awaken latent potential in compatible species. Knowledge must continue." Evolution. Must endure. Suddenly, Dr. Velasquez's scanner beeped wildly. The pulse from the sphere had changed pattern, syncing with their heartbeats. "Commander, this is affecting us," she said. "It's not dangerous, but it's doing something to our neural activity." "Shut it down," Rourke ordered. But before they could act, the sphere flared brightly. A wave of energy passed through the room, making their visors flash white. When the light faded, the chamber was silent again. The hum of the sphere had stopped. The crew checked their systems. Everything seemed normal, but something had changed. Each of them felt different, more aware, stronger somehow. Their movements were sharper, their minds clearer. It was subtle but real. "Are you all right?" Rourke asked. Dr. Velasquez nodded slowly. "Yes, but I feel strange. Like my thoughts are moving faster." They decided to return to the surface. As they climbed back through the tunnels, Rourke kept thinking about the AI's words. Deathworld, successors, evolution. He couldn't shake the feeling that humanity hadn't just found an ancient warning. They had triggered something meant specifically for them. Back aboard the Odyssey Dawn, medical scans confirmed unusual changes in the team's brain activity. Their reflexes had improved, their stress levels dropped, and their cognitive responses were 30% faster than before. Dr. Velasquez studied the data in silence. "It's as if the signal unlocked something inside us," she said. Something that was already there, just waiting. The ship's AI, Athena, also reported small fluctuations in the human crew's biofrequency patterns, describing them as adaptive enhancements. No one could explain how it happened or why it only affected those who had entered the chamber. In the following days, the crew analyzed all the data they had collected from the planet. The Lutherans had clearly intended their signal to reach another species, but not for rescue. It was a seed, carrying knowledge and transformation, a message to awaken evolution, where it had not yet fully bloomed. Dr. Velasquez wrote in her log, "The Lutherans were not asking for help. They were giving it in their own strange way. Their world died, but they made sure their story would live inside us." Commander Rourke, however, felt uneasy. The more he thought about it, the more he realized that what had happened might not be a gift at all. "If this signal can change us," he said to her quietly, "what else can it do? What if it's not awakening us, but preparing us?" Dr. Velasquez looked out the viewport at the dead world below. "Maybe that's what evolution is," she said softly. "Preparation for what comes next." As the Odyssey Dawn left orbit, the SOS signal faded behind them, still pulsing faintly from beneath the surface of Luthra 4. No one knew how long it would continue or who else might one day hear it, but the crew who had heard it first were no longer the same. Humanity had come to answer a call for help, but instead they had been changed by it, and somewhere deep inside each of them, the legacy of the Lutherans had begun to awaken. When the Odyssey Dawn returned to human space, everyone expected celebration. Billions of people were watching the live transmission as the ship crossed the jump gate and entered Sol system. They had done what no one else had ever done. They had answered an alien call. But no one on the crew felt like heroes. Something had changed inside them, something none of them fully understood. Commander Elias Rourke stood at the viewing window as Earth came into sight, a blue and white marble glowing in the dark. It should have felt like home, but it didn't. The stars looked sharper, the colors brighter, the sounds deeper. His senses were different now. Everything felt alive, connected. He had slept only 3 hours in the last 2 days, but felt no fatigue. The others on the crew reported the same strange effects. No hunger, no sickness, no fear. Their medical scans showed incredible improvements in health, immunity, and brain activity. At first, the doctors on Earth didn't believe the data. They thought the equipment on the ship must have malfunctioned. But when the crew returned to the medical facilities on Luna Station, every test confirmed it. Their bodies were changing. Their neural activity was faster, their muscles stronger, their reflexes sharper. Their DNA showed signs of rapid adaptation, as if something had unlocked hidden potential inside them. Dr. Amira Velasquez led the first debriefing with the Earth System Science Council. She explained everything that had happened on Luthra 4, the signal, the underground vault, the AI called Archivist 9, and the strange pulse that had passed through them. The scientists listened in stunned silence. When she finished, one of them asked, "Are you saying the signal rewrote your biology?" She shook her head. "Not exactly. It didn't change us, it woke something already inside us. The Lutherans called us Deathworlders. They believed we evolved on a planet so dangerous that survival made us strong, even by galactic standards. The signal triggered what they called latent potential. It's like humanity had an extra layer of evolution waiting to happen, and the signal was the key. The news spread faster than light. People across the colonies were amazed and terrified. The idea that humans had been awakened by alien technology shook every belief system. Some thought it was a miracle, a sign that humanity was chosen for something greater. Others warned that tampering with such power would lead to disaster. The government tried to keep the biological data secret, but it leaked within days. Every corporation, research center, and military organization wanted access to it. Genetic labs began studying the crew's samples. They called it the Luthra effect. At first, scientists tried to reproduce it in controlled environments, exposing volunteers to the recorded pulse frequency from the alien vault. The results were real, though weaker than the original effect. Subjects became faster, stronger, and more focused. Their fear responses dropped dramatically. Soon, enhancement programs began in secret. The military wanted soldiers who could survive any battlefield. The mining companies wanted workers who could withstand radiation and extreme temperatures. Even the medical sector saw potential for curing diseases, but no one asked whether humanity was ready for what was happening. Commander Rourke hated what he saw. He had joined the mission to help another species, not to create superhumans. "We were supposed to learn from the Lutherans," he said during one of his private reports, "not repeat their mistakes." But his warnings were ignored. The world had become obsessed with power again. Dr. Velasquez tried to guide the research ethically. She argued that the Lutheran signal was not just a tool, it was a message, a test of character. The Lutherans destroyed themselves because they couldn't control their evolution, she said in a speech to the council. If we are their successors, we must not make the same mistake. But her voice was drowned out by the excitement of progress. Within a decade, the Luthra effect spread through society. At first, it was limited to elite programs and volunteers, but as technology improved, synthetic versions of the signal, called neural catalysts, became available to the public. People could upgrade themselves, enhancing reflexes, memory, and emotional control. Humanity was evolving by choice. Crime rates dropped because people no longer felt fear or desperation. Productivity soared. Space exploration entered a new golden age. Humans began colonizing harsher worlds, planets that had once been considered too dangerous. Within 30 years, the outer systems were full of new settlements thriving under extreme conditions. The press began calling this new generation Deathworlders, the name the AI had used. It became a symbol of pride. To be human now meant to be unbreakable. News programs showed workers walking through acid storms on Venus and soldiers training in zero gravity without suits. Humanity had become a species of survivors and conquerors, but there were problems hidden beneath the glory. The Luthra effect made people stronger, but it also changed their emotions. Many who had undergone full adaptation reported losing empathy. They stopped fearing pain or death, but they also stopped caring deeply about others. Relationships weakened. Compassion became rare. Humanity was becoming efficient, fearless, and cold. Dr. Velasquez noticed it first. She had undergone only partial exposure during the mission, so she could still feel emotions more clearly than most. She saw how society was shifting, how the new humans were starting to see the old, unmodified ones as inferior. Quietly, she began collecting data and recording her thoughts. The Lutherans didn't die because they were weak, she wrote in her notes. They died because they lost what made life worth protecting. Commander Rourke lived in isolation after retiring from the military. His body was still strong even as decades passed. He barely aged. Sometimes he would look at his reflection and feel like a stranger. He could remember emotions like love, fear, and hope, but he couldn't feel them as deeply anymore. It was as if part of him had gone silent. He often thought about the AI's final words on Luthra are, "You will survive." He finally understood that survival and living were not the same thing. By the next century, humanity had spread across more than 50 star systems. The colonies on the edges of explored space were harsh and wild, but humans thrived there better than any species could have. They adapted to radiation, gravity shifts, and alien bacteria. They built cities inside volcanoes and under frozen seas. Wherever they went, they survived. Other intelligent species eventually made contact. smaller, peaceful civilizations that had been watching humanity from afar. To them, humans were terrifying. They had evolved on what galactic scholars called a death world, a planet where almost everything tried to kill you. Storms, predators, diseases. No other intelligent species had ever come from such a hostile environment. To the rest of the galaxy, humans were monsters of endurance, beings who could survive anything. At first, the new civilizations tried to form alliances. But humans didn't just want peace. They wanted to explore, expand, and control. Colonies grew into empires. Trade routes turned into territories. Within a few hundred years, humanity became the dominant force across several sectors. The galaxy began calling them the Deathworlders, not just for their origins, but for their unstoppable nature. Dr. Velasquez lived long enough to see this transformation. The Luthra effect had slowed her aging, allowing her to watch generations rise and fall. She became a quiet critic of the new order, warning that humanity was losing balance. "We have learned how to survive everything," she said in one of her last broadcasts, "but we have forgotten how to live with each other." Her warnings went largely unheard. The new leaders of the Stellar Dominion, the United Human Empire, saw her as a relic of the past. They believed humanity had fulfilled its destiny. The ancient Lutherans had failed, but humans had succeeded where they fell. War, disease, and fear were gone. Only progress remained. Yet beneath that shining surface, cracks were forming. Entire colonies rebelled against the Dominion's strict control. The adapted humans, the strongest and most fearless, believed they were superior to those who refused the enhancements. Civil unrest began to spread. History was repeating itself just as the Lutheran AI had predicted. On his final day, Commander Rourke sat inside an observation dome on a remote moon. He was over 100 years old but looked no older than 40. As he watched the stars, he thought about how it all began, with one simple message, an SOS echoing through the dark. "We answered a call for help," he whispered, and became something no one could have imagined. He died quietly, but his words were later found in his personal log. Scholars and historians would quote them for centuries. The story of the Odyssey Dawn became legend, the mission that awakened humanity's true nature. By then, Earth itself had become only a symbol, a museum planet visited by few. Humanity's new home was among the stars, where only the strongest could thrive. The Lutherans' message had done its work. It had awakened the Deathworlders, the beings who would one day shape the fate of the entire galaxy. And somewhere in the darkness, the ancient SOS from Luthra 4 still pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat that refused to fade. No one knew how long it would last or who might hear it next. But for humanity, it had already done what it was meant to do. It had reminded them that survival is both a gift and a curse, and that the true test of a species is not how strong it becomes, but whether it remembers why it was alive in the first place. Centuries passed and humanity continued to spread like wildfire across the galaxy. What began as small colonies became mighty cities glowing under alien suns. They mined asteroids, tamed storms on gas giants, and built starships the size of continents. From the outside, it looked like the golden age of mankind had truly begun, but under that brilliance, shadows were growing, slowly, silently, dangerously. The humans who had fully adapted to the Luthra effect called themselves the Awakened. They believed they were the next step in evolution, the true form of humanity. The ones who refused or were unable to adapt were called naturals. At first, the difference was just biological, but over time it became social. The Awakened began to rule over everything: the military, the government, even the economy. They said they were simply more capable. The naturals became second-class citizens, forced to work in colonies where the conditions were too harsh for anyone else. On the planet Helios Prime, a natural historian named Caden Miles began collecting old data logs from the original Odyssey Dawn mission. He found recordings of Commander Rourke and Dr. Velasquez, and he became obsessed with their warnings. They had seen what was coming long before anyone else. "We are losing our humanity," Dr. Velasquez had said. "If strength is all that matters, then soon we will destroy ourselves." Caden tried to share these messages across the Stellar Dominion's communication networks, but censorship was everywhere. The Dominion didn't want people remembering the past. They only wanted them to believe in progress. So Caden went underground, forming a secret network called Echo. Its members were mostly naturals, but some awakened who still valued emotion and empathy joined too. They believed that the only way to save humanity was to remember who they were before the signal. Meanwhile, tensions between colonies kept rising. The Awakened began to see rebellion everywhere. They created new laws that gave them full control over interplanetary trade, resources, and travel. Protests broke out, but the military crushed them with ruthless efficiency. The Dominion called it maintaining stability. The rebels called it tyranny. Then came the event that changed everything, the collapse of Orion Station. It was a research base orbiting a black dwarf star, where scientists were experimenting with the original Luthra signal. They wanted to create a stronger version, one that could trigger full adaptation in anyone instantly, but something went wrong. The moment they activated the pulse, the entire station went silent. Every signal, every heartbeat vanished. When a rescue fleet arrived days later, they found the station drifting, its lights dead. Inside, hundreds of researchers floated lifeless in the corridors, their bodies perfectly preserved but their eyes blackened like burnt glass. There were no wounds, no signs of struggle. The data logs were corrupted except for one short message repeating over and over. The signal was not meant to be used again. The news of Orion Station's fall spread fast, even though the Dominion tried to cover it up. For the first time in centuries, fear returned to human hearts. People began questioning whether the Luthra technology had been a gift or a curse. Some believed the AI on Luthra 4 had left traps to prevent humans from becoming too powerful. Others said the scientists at Orion had awakened something far worse, a consciousness hidden inside the signal itself. Caden Miles and the Echo Network saw this as a turning point. Using secret transmissions, they released Rourke's final log to every system. His words spread like wildfire. We answered a call for help and became something no one could have imagined. For many, it was the first time they had heard the true story of how it all began. Rebellions ignited across the Dominion. On dozens of worlds, naturals and awakened fought side by side, demanding freedom and equality. Some awakened soldiers refused to attack civilians and joined the rebels instead. The Dominion responded with brutal force, sending entire fleets to burn rebellious colonies. Cities were turned to ash, planets went dark. The war lasted for years. Billions died. But through the chaos, something unexpected happened. Humanity began to remember its heart. Soldiers started saving civilians. Engineers risked their lives to repair oxygen systems on dying colonies. And scientists worked together to rebuild communication networks that the Dominion had destroyed. For the first time in centuries, humans began to act not as predators or conquerors, but as a family again. During the final phase of the war, Caden discovered something shocking hidden deep in the Luthra archives. The original AI, Archivist 9, had left a final message encrypted in the signal, something no one had ever decoded before. It wasn't a command or warning. It was a plea. We failed because we forgot why we lived. Do not make our mistake. That line became the symbol of the revolution. People painted it on walls, whispered it in secret meetings, and engraved it on their ships. The phrase spread faster than any weapon ever could. Even awakened soldiers began to question the Dominion's purpose. When the Dominion finally fell, it wasn't through force. It collapsed because no one believed in it anymore. Its fleets surrendered, its leaders vanished, and its cities opened their gates to the rebels. Humanity stood free once again, but the galaxy was scarred. Entire planets had been destroyed. Billions were gone. Caden Miles, now an old man, became one of the architects of the new order, the Council of Renewal. Instead of rebuilding an empire, they built a community. Every colony, no matter how small, had a voice. Every being, natural or awakened, was equal. They banned the uncontrolled use of the Luthra signal and destroyed the last machines capable of reproducing it. Still, the changes it had made to human biology could never be undone. Humanity remained stronger, faster, and smarter than before, but now they carried the weight of their mistakes. They had learned that survival meant nothing without compassion. On the centennial anniversary of the Odyssey Dawn mission, the Council sent a single starship back to Luthra Aurora. It was called New Dawn, crewed by both naturals and awakened. Their mission was not to conquer or extract technology, but to honor the memory of the beings who had once tried to save them. When the ship landed on the desolate surface of Luthra 4, the crew found the ancient vault still standing. The storm had quieted. The ruins were silent, but deep below the surface, the faint hum of the AI's core remained. They reactivated it, and Archivist 9 appeared one last time, flickering and weak. It looked at the humans silently for a long moment before speaking. "You came back," it said, its voice soft and broken. Captain Nira Holt, leader of the New Dawn, stepped forward. "We came to thank you," she said. "Your message changed us. It almost destroyed us too, but we learned." The AI's light dimmed for a moment, then brightened again. "Then perhaps we did not fail after all," it whispered. "The Deathworlders remember." And with that the core went dark forever. The crew stood in silence for several minutes. Some of them felt tears forming, something rare in their era. They left a memorial behind, a simple stone engraved with words from Dr. Velasquez's journals. To be human is not to survive the storm, but to remember the light. When the New Dawn returned to human space, its message was broadcast across every system. It spoke not of war or strength, but of unity and memory. Humanity had finally learned that evolution was not just about adapting the body, it was about healing the soul. Generations later, the story of the Odyssey Dawn, the Deathworlders, and the Lutheran Signal became legend. Children learned it not as a warning, but as a lesson. They were taught that power without empathy leads to ruin, that survival without purpose is hollow, and that the greatest strength lies not in fearlessness, but in understanding. By the 1000th year after the first SOS, humanity had changed beyond recognition. They no longer ruled through dominance, but through wisdom. They became the mentors of younger civilizations, guiding them, protecting them, helping them avoid the same mistakes. Across the stars, the Deathworlders were no longer feared, they were respected, and sometimes, when explorers traveled to the edge of known space, they still heard a faint echo in their communication arrays, a repeating signal almost like a whisper. No one could trace its source, but those who listened closely swore it said the same words over and over, "Help us remember." And every time, humanity answered not with weapons or ambition, but with compassion, courage, and the quiet wisdom earned through centuries of pain. For the first time in their long history, the Deathworlders had truly awoken, not as conquerors, but as keepers of life in a universe that had once feared them.